Welcome to the Fountains Studio Celebration. For many of us, the results of this week's election were disappointing and alarming. Many of us have loved ones or may be ourselves feeling hurt and scared. As a community of faith that has worked openly to embrace the excluded and oppressed in our community, the results of the election brings the alarm of seeing the broader community turn their backs on many of the values that are at the heart of our mission to put love first in the world. For our LGBTQ plus friends, family, and members, we share your sadness and concern. For our non-Christian friends, especially our Muslim neighbors, know that in anticipation of your rights and freedoms potentially being threatened, know that we will continue to advocate for and stand with you. For all the women and other minorities, including our Jewish friends and Hispanic neighbors whom I've heard from and who are anxious about the future, please know that you're not alone. The Fountain's mission is not just to put love first. In full, our mission states that we're an open and inclusive community on a journey together, asking questions, challenging the status quo, seeking answers, and growing in our faith together as we actively work toward a more just and peaceful world. That mission hasn't changed. It won't change. But our collective awareness of just how big the challenge is has just been served a huge wake-up call. We have work to do, remembering that as a congregation of predominantly middle-class, straight, white Protestants, we have privileges and power that those who are threatened for being different do not have. The coming days will require more of us than many of us have ever considered before. And guess what? For those of you who have been feeling that the church has lost its relevance and influence in the culture, not anymore. Time to get to work. The need to lean into making Jesus' vision tangible in the world just got way more real. So yeah, we may feel disappointed, but now is not the time to throw up our hands in frustration. Now is the time to be intentional about reaching out to those who you know who are understandably afraid and feeling alone, and letting them know they can count on you. So, wherever and whenever you're joining us from, we're glad you're here.
Join us as we get in the Spirit. Wellspring of all time, source of all that is.
Our few short years are fleeting and precious.
In them may we know beginnings in every ending.
May our dreamings find expression in reality.
May we marvel at the mysteries of life.
And strive to know its ways.
We prepare our hearts and minds this day,
that they may be open to the possibilities.
Strength to tell the truth that love demands. God of justice, move your people. God of justice, make us one. Joined in work and hope and prayer until your will is fully done. Help us make our lives a witness to your love of lost and least. As we set your sacred table, calling all to join the feast.
Let's affirm the Fountain's mission together.
As followers of Jesus,
We put love first.
As we enter into this time of quiet and meditation, may the Spirit be at work in us to create a moment of stillness in the midst of all the noise, especially in times when uncertainty, turmoil, mistrust, and grief threaten to overwhelm us. We need to be intentional about unclenching our bodies so our deepest selves can be quiet and open. So, wherever you are and whenever you're experiencing this moment, I invite you to take a deep breath and center down. Set aside the chatter in your head, all the distractions of your conscious mind, and simply be still. Breathe deep, calm your mind, and create a space for the Spirit to move around you and within you in the here and now.
Where love and caring are, there is God. Where love and caring are, there is God. Where love and caring are, there is God. Where love and caring are, there is
We come to this sacred place to be enriched and strengthened and renewed in spirit. We come to this place to continue on the path and the journey that calls us to be all that we can be.
in all of our adequacy and inadequacy, may we be caring people. In all of our strength and weaknesses, may we be people true to our best and highest selves.
In all of our happiness and our sadness, may we search for the best ways to respond to life. We lament those times when our faith is little more than just fine words and high ideals. May we become people of vitality and commitment.
May ours be a faith that shines to the world as the light of deeds and the witness of actions. Source and spirit of our lives, may we respond boldly to the call for justice, for love, for joy. This is our prayer.
We offer this time of quiet, bringing our whole selves in the name of the one who taught his first followers to pray the prayer we now sing together.
Our Father who art in heaven,
Hi, everybody. It's Donna Wild and Richard Powley of Wild Play. Well, we are super excited because again this year we are going to put on a wonderful production of Beatles Nativity called Let It Be Christmas. We have a terrific cast. We have the Fountain Singers, the Fountains Bells, and we have musicians. And we are looking forward to giving you a great holiday experience that combines the story of the Nativity with the music of the Beatles. Now, a production of this size requires a lot of moving parts. And so we are asking for some help this year. We have 5 sponsorship levels. We have John, Paul, George, Ringo, and the White Album.
Ooh, the White Album.
Yeah, Richard, the White Album. Well, let's hear about these levels. The John level is $50. The Paul level is $150. And the George level is $300. These first 3 levels will get your name or a dedication on our program. Now the next level is the Ringo level at $500.
500?
Yes, $500.
But what do you get for $500?
Well, Richard, the Ringo level at $500 gets your name in the program and includes an invite to our dress rehearsal where you can see some behind the scenes action. And we're even going to throw in some special delicious refreshments.
Cookies!
Yeah, this guy's a cookie monster over here. So yeah, we're going to throw in cookies and other special refreshments. Now for the White Album. This is at the $1,000 level. You're going to get everything from the Ringo level and a 45-minute live music performance at a gathering of yours.
Like a party, dinner, or any other event, right?
Any other kind of event. We will come to your place and we'll play for 45 minutes. It's going to be so much fun. We really appreciate your generosity and support, and we're looking forward to making this holiday season one to remember. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here at the Fountains, we're all about putting love first, whether you're with us in person or joining online.
And if you're one of our regular online viewers, we just want to say thanks for being part of our digital family.
Each week, we mention a few easy ways you can support this online community, like scanning the QR code on your screen, visiting giveweputlovefirst.org, or using the Vanco app. When you're there, just look for the studio celebration option.
When you give, it shows us you're out there and that this studio matters to you. Your support helps us grow this digital outreach.
No matter where or when you're tuning in, we're so glad you're with us.
And thanks in advance for supporting the studio financially.
The day after our election last week, the wealth of the world's 10 richest people soared by over $64 billion, leaving no question as to who is going to benefit most from the coming administration. The biggest gainer was, of course, Elon Musk, already the world's richest person, whose wealth jumped $26.5 billion in one day. In round numbers, at my current salary, I'd have to work approximately 530,000 years to make that amount of money. $265.5 billion in one day. So it seems all the more appropriate to hear a story today that put things in perspective and involves something most of us are more familiar with: a few pennies. Back in Jesus' day, there were a lot of parallels with our current situation. Between the occupying Romans taxing people off their land and most of the wealth being consolidated in the hands of a few Jewish elite, most common people were desperate, few worse off in a pre-social safety net world than widows. So, who better for Jesus to lift up as the one person to emulate in this story? Not to get too much into the weeds here, but the coins mentioned in our story were what's called a mite. They were a small bronze coin about the size of a dime and were worth 1/64th of a denarius. What was a denarius? About a day's wage for a laborer. So in today's terms, we're talking about a mite being worth 1/8 of a cent. Also keep in mind that in Jesus' day, widows were under no obligation to give to the temple, as they were themselves usually the recipients of charity being distributed by the temple. We don't know the motive of this unnamed widow, but considering that in both Mark and Luke, Jesus goes out of his way to condemn the relative meaninglessness of the gifts given by the wealthy, perhaps Jesus is not acknowledging the widow's comparative generosity, insomuch as he's marveling at her act as a symbol of being in solidarity with those who, even in her tenuous state, are even less fortunate than she is.
Our words of wisdom are from Luke chapter 21, verses 1 through 4.
Just then, Jesus looked up and saw the rich people dropping offerings in the collection plate. Then he saw a poor widow put in 2 pennies. He said,
The plain truth is that this widow has given by far the largest offering today. All these others made offerings that they'll never miss. She gave extravagantly what she couldn't afford. She gave it her all.
Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church.
Thanks be to God.
When folks arrived at church on election day, the Connection Center was all abuzz with poll workers and voters. But then Dee Dee noticed something else. All around the campus, someone had placed New Testaments, King James, of course, with big stickers on them that said, "Free, take me home," with a smiley face. What's wrong with giving away free Bibles, right? Let me count the ways. First off, as a polling place, there's to be no electioneering. And in our current cultural environment, handing out Bibles, especially the version favored by evangelical Christians, could clearly be interpreted as electioneering. Plus, as a church providing space for a polling place, We don't want to be seen as breaking the wall of church-state separation by proselytizing neighbors coming to vote. But the unsolicited placement of the Bibles wasn't the only thing worth noting. Each Bible also included multiple photocopied pages of Bible verses claiming to provide salvation for anyone who embraced their truth. And at the end, the closing paragraph revealed a sentiment that, from my perspective, is the whole problem. Salvation is easy. Just believe the gospel and you are saved. It's 100% Jesus and what he did on the cross. He forgave all sins. He paid the debt for us. It's 0% what we do. We just believe that he did it for us. Accept the free gift. Salvation is easy. Just believe. It's free. Friends, this is what we call in the church biz cheap grace. It's instant gratification, an easy fix. And along with being a lie, plain and simple, it's a betrayal of what Jesus was actually on about and his expectation of his followers. It also goes a long way to explaining the results of last week's election. If you didn't already know it, Americans are an easy mark. We are, by reputation and in reality, insufferable pudding heads, eager to be bamboozled by whatever con man du jour comes along. And in the face of growing racism, misogyny, xenophobia, and prejudices against immigrants and the LGBTQ+ community, fully half the country has been bamboozled into choosing what they perceive to be the easy fix. Salvation is easy. Just believe. Trump will fix it. Instant gratification that not only costs straight white men nothing, it achieves validation by bolstering the status quo and diminishing and subjugating everyone else. If we've learned anything from this week's election, it's that our country is in a lot of trouble. Why? Not because of immigration, which is the soul of who we are as a country. Not because of the economy, which is currently the envy of the world. And not because of transgender people, who are not predatory, but among the most vulnerable population in our culture. But because the majority of people in the country want to go back to a time when women and minorities knew their place, and anyone who wasn't Christian knew to sit down and shut up. It's that easy fix. The problem is, going back means not only denying reality, but denying the existence of nearly half the people in the country. To paraphrase John Pavlovitz, we are witnessing a spectacular failure of the collective humanity of this nation, a defiant refusal to welcome in our better angels, and a passionate embrace of the darkest recesses of our shadow sides. Unapologetic racism, contempt for the different, a disregard for women, and unrepentant hatred. Friends, in both religion and in politics, we have to get over the easy fix. It's a lie. And in the case of this week's election, it's straightforward escapism, evading the real issues at hand in order to avoid any personal responsibility. Oh, I get it. Why would society want to face its existential problems? It's hard. It's hard. So instead, the majority of us have chosen the course which promises, falsely, to take us back to a time when what they perceive as problems weren't problems at all. Remember that time when there were no gay people? Ah, so much easier. But there are realities that continue to speak. The oceans are warming. That won't go away. The ice caps are melting. That won't go away. The poor and oppressed will eventually demand solutions and not submit to being someone else's scapegoat. That is not going away. I guess it goes without saying that the result of the election was not the result I was hoping for. And perhaps naively, what I was hoping for were policies and plans that were more in line with the vision Jesus has for the world, which the president-elect's plans demonstrably are not. And more than anything, I am really thinking about all of my friends and loved ones who are afraid, worried, and who stand to be seriously harmed by what has been promised. Some examples. The new administration's playbook, Project 2025, calls for deleting the words sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender, abortion, reproductive health, and reproductive rights out of every federal rule, agency regulation, contract, grant, and piece of legislation that currently exists. It also calls for rescinding other regulations prohibiting discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. So it's back to the bad old days of firing people or having permission to exclude them simply because they're gay. Okay, so you're not gay and don't know anyone who is. Do you or any of your loved ones ever have sex? Authors of Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation, are also advocating against the use of contraceptives in general, as part of what they call the senseless use of birth control pills and their effort to end recreational sex and restore, quote, the consequentiality to sex, unquote. Remember the dreamers? Those young people who were brought into the US as children and have grown up as Americans, gone to school, and now have entered into the workplace? Many don't even know how to speak the language of the country in which they were born, let alone know anybody there. Robbie Jones, who was with us a few weeks ago, said that one of his daughter's best friends is a dreamer. She grew up in DC, was a top student, an award-winning athlete, and is now working, paying taxes, and contributing to society. But she's worried. Why? Because she's a primary target of Project 2025, which clearly states that its plans are to strip the legal status from over 500,000 dreamers and deport them. Never mind that they grew up here and consider themselves to be Americans, first and foremost. Also on the chopping block are things like the Department of Education. That's just a bloated bureaucracy, right? Good riddance! Well, this bloated bureaucracy is the one that makes sure that disabled kids are accommodated educationally in our schools, and that school buildings are accessible regardless of disability. That's going away. Separation of church and state is going away too. Just look at the Project 2025 testing ground of Texas. the Ten Commandments posted in all classrooms, untrained, unsupervised religious chaplains replacing school counselors, the banning of books, and curriculum that teaches Bible stories as historical fact. That is all going national. And what if your local tax base can't support a school building? Well, right now the federal government pays for all children to go to school, including homeless kids in poor neighborhoods. That's going away, along with federal background checks to make sure we don't have sex offenders around our children. And that doesn't even begin to cover the other stated plans to dismantle the Affordable Care Act, fire thousands of federal workers, shut down anything to do with curbing climate change, abandoning our allies abroad, leaving NATO, and hanging the people of Ukraine and Gaza out to dry. I hope I'm wrong, but everything I've just mentioned is public record. So we've got a lot of work to do. And job one is, don't give in to fear or despair. Let me remind you middle-class American Christians that, for the most part, we've all been duped into thinking that being a Christian is mainly about feeling all warm and fuzzy because Jesus loves us, and smug because we're going to heaven and no one else is. I call BS. Jesus' first followers lived in a hostile and unjust world, and they intentionally came together as a community because they knew that the only way that they were going to really emulate Jesus was by working together, seeking justice, loving their neighbors, and cultivating communities whose values were radically contrary to the greed, violence, and exclusion all around them. If we're honest, the followers of Jesus have always been more faithful to Jesus' vision when they were surviving at the margins with marginalized people, providing a witness to an alternative way of existing in the world. So, in the immortal words of John Lewis, do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. And remember that widow in our Luke passage today? I love that if you change the spelling of those mites from M-I-T-E to M-I-G-H-T, you get a whole new meaning. The widow's mite becomes, those widows just might change the world. And don't underestimate the might of those widows. After all, as Henry Nouwen said, those who choose, even on a small scale, to love in the midst of hatred and fear are the people who offer true hope to our world. Look, as I heard one person say online, when it comes right down to it, the election has revealed that over half of this country really doesn't value the notions of being kind, being generous, loving your neighbor, accepting others, having empathy, showing understanding, being truthful, being ethical, not being a bully, not being selfish, and not being a sexual predator. So, what are we going to do? Activist and minister Venice Williams wrote to her community this week, "You are awakening to the same country you fell asleep to. the very same country. Pull yourself together. And when you ask me, don't ask me, what do we do now? How do we get through the next 4 years? Some of my ancestors dealt with at least 400 years of this under worse conditions. Continue to do the good work. Continue to build bridges, not walls. Continue to lead with compassion. Continue the demanding work of liberation for all. Continue to dismantle broken systems, large and small. Continue to set the best example for the children. Continue to be a vessel of nourishing joy. Continue right where you are, right where you live into your days. Do so in the name of the Creator who expects nothing less from each of us. And if you're not continuing all of the above in community, partnership, collaboration, what is it you've been doing? What is it you are waiting for? Earlier this week, I was on a Zoom call with Robbie Jones, Kristen Dumais, Jamar Tisby, and Diana Butler-Bass. Robbie said, look, we have crossed over a bright line over which we can't return. And from the people who study history and sociology come warnings that we're in for an unprecedented time in this country. Overall, as white American Christians, we've been very comfortable. But it is because we are who we are that the coming days are going to require us to cash in some chips. If we genuinely care about Jesus' message of caring for the voiceless and the oppressed, then the coming days may require us to step outside our comfort zones, to speak up and take action like we never have before. And if that sounds scary, let me remind you of a tradition of the Lutheran St. Olaf Choir. The singers memorize their music so they can hold hands while they sing. That way, when one of them needs to take a breath, they can squeeze their partner's hand, and their partner can make sure that they sustain that note while their neighbor takes a breath. Friends, the coming days promise to include moments where we're going to need to squeeze one another's hands when we need to take a breath. Salvation is not free. As much as we'd like it to be so, there is no easy fix. Transformation is hard work, the work of a lifetime. And we are lucky to be a part of a community where there are not only so many hands to hold, but where sometimes we can be the hand that's there for someone else. In closing, let me offer a blessing by poet Jan Richardson. She calls a blessing when the world is ending. Look, the world is always ending somewhere. Somewhere the sun has come crashing down. Somewhere it's gone completely dark. Somewhere it's ended with the gun, the knife, the fist. Somewhere it has ended with the slammed door, the shattered hope. Somewhere it has ended with the utter quiet that follows the news from the phone, the television, the hospital room. Somewhere it has ended with a tenderness that will break your heart. But listen, this blessing means to be anything but morose. It has not come to cause despair. It is simply here because there is nothing a blessing is better suited for than an ending. Nothing that cries out more for a blessing than when a world is falling apart. This blessing will not fix you, will not mend you, will not give you false comfort. It will not talk to you about one door opening when another one closes. It will simply sit itself beside you among the shards and gently turn your face toward the direction from which the light will come, gathering itself about you as the world begins again. Be well. Now, I don't know about you, but I've basically been trying to avoid watching or reading any news this week. But there are a couple of books that I've been grateful to have close at hand, and maybe you'd find them of interest yourself. For your history fix, try A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. For some background on the evangelical movement and what we're up against, get yourself a copy of Kristen Dumais' Jesus and John Wayne: How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation. And if you prefer your dystopian end-of-the-world reading in the form of satirical fiction, try Sinclair Lewis's 1930s classic, It Can't Happen Here. Don't forget, if you liked what you heard today, buy me a coffee. The link's in the description.
Persist in love, enduring hope, restorer of our hearts. We now take up your sacred call, prepared to do our parts. The road is long, the path is hard, yet still each day we strive to welcome all, to freely give, that all might live and thrive. When we are filled with pain and rage, or faced with doubt and fear, we keep your kingdom goal in sight and gladly persevere. We seek to share your daring dream, to make your vision known, as we press on in faith and trust, assured we are your own. Persistent love, may we persist in all that we've begun. Enduring hope, may we endure until your will is done.
Let us offer these words of challenge and blessing to one another as we go. Today's celebration is just a prelude.
Genuine discipleship begins out in the world.
The one you seek is not here. He has gone ahead of you.
To be found amid the brokenness of the world,
Following Jesus does not consist of heartfelt words,
of fervent prayer or bread and wine,
but of lives well lived.
among those who need our love.
May we go in the assurance of the Spirit's presence along the way.
Amen.
Amen.